Act to Make an Impact is a video podcast series about positive change in the fashion industry, talking with everyone who can make an impact, from consumers to politicians. This episode we will answer the question, is circular fashion the ultimate answer to the current failing fashion system?
Yes, Well, hello guys. I'm really happy to see all of you. I'd like to share a little bit more about our mission. Our mission is, of course, to make a positive impact, and we like to do that with conscious fashion campaigns. And we invite people to take action with our campaigns. We want to inspire people, we want to inform people, educate people, but the most important thing is we want people to take action. And in a few minutes, or 1 minute, we will start recording the 4th episode of Act to Make an Impact, and we will talk about circular fashion. And we will do that with 3 experts, Gwen Cunningham, Annemieke Koster, and José Koopman. Before we introduce ourselves, I would like to know who is in the audience.
Well, I started my own business in rental clothing. And I'm very interested in all the opinions and perspective regards that concept and the future, obviously.
Okay, so I think we will start with introducing ourselves. José, since you are already feeling it, introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is José Koopman. I work in the fashion industry already for more than 25 years. First as a buyer. And since 12 or 13 years, I have my own company, Koopman Works, and I advise startups, brands, and factories how to source and buy in a sustainable way.
Thank you. Annemieke?
Thanks. My name is Annemieke Koster. 6 years ago, I quit my job in advertising to start a sustainable weaving mill and knitting factory in Holland. We produce fashion and interior textiles from recycled resources.
Wow. My name is Gwen Cunningham, 2 hats. So on one hand, I am a lecturer and coordinator on the topic of circularity at the Amsterdam Fashion Institute, where I'm trying to embed this topic into the education. And on the other hand, I lead the textiles program at an impact organization called Circular Economy. So there we mostly work with brands, but also collectors, sorters, recyclers, everyone along the circular supply chain.
As I said, experts, real experts. I'm just pretending. So I'm really curious. Gwen, what is your definition of making impact?
Yeah, I find that a really difficult question. Maybe one that keeps you up at night if you're in the impact world, because you never feel like it's enough. But for me, impact is really about and what I think of as an obligation to act. And I think we all have an obligation to act, and I very much like the sentiment in the film, which says that, you really need to find the vehicle for your action, which is linked to your own skill set, what you bring to the table. And I'm a big believer that every action has a reaction. I think it can be...
A positive chain of change?
Yes, like this idea of kind of collateral benefit, that if you are trying to have an impact, that there will be this kind of a ripple effect in your community. So I think that even the smallest impact can have a monumental knock-on effect. That in itself is a challenge, because I think in the world that we work in sustainability, we're so used in other fields of life to have this instant gratification, where you put something out into the world and you immediately see the result of that action. And we don't have that luxury in many ways. So there's a certain level of trust and hope that also comes with trying to achieve an impact. And that can be quite a test of your patience, often.
I totally agree. Great things take great time. We have to be really patient. I mean, you work for a very long time in the fashion industry, but you can see some positive change, right? Can you maybe describe what making impact means for you?
For me, making impact is improving people's lives. And that can be in different aspects. It can be about less pollution in the textile industry, because that's my sector, that's the only thing I know. So, and it's about improving people's working circumstances. So if I can assist or advise a factory and they have 1,000 employees and we can make a minor change only by reducing the overtime they're working, we have an influence on 1,000 people and they can go home at 6 o'clock to the kids. So for me, it's about improving people's lives.
I like that, and then you really feel also what you're doing is really important, right?
Yes, that's the nice thing about my work. You can see the immediate results. Of course, also the long-term results, because not everybody's acting immediately on your advice, unfortunately, but yes.
Annemieke.
To me, making an impact is doing what you do well and trusting others in collaborations to contribute to make an impact together. So collaboration is key to me, and also positivity, persistence, and trying, and also accepting that you cannot do everything yourselves, but also getting other people to help you achieve a goal.
I totally agree. That's why we all work in the fashion industry, because we are all good at one thing and everyone is good at something, and we have to collaborate. That's why we're here, of course, tonight. And I'm really curious, Annemieke, can you maybe explain why it is important what you do as a sustainable weaving mill, and why it is important for creating the circular fashion industry?
Well, when I started, I was perhaps fortunate enough to not know anything about textile production, so I could start my weaving mill based on what I thought was good production instead of how it should be done. And I started talking to a lot of designers, a lot of brands, and asked them what they were missing. And I noticed that a lot of designers are forced to buy a lot of fabrics at the same time. So if they find a sustainable option, they are forced to buy 500 or 1,000 meters at once, and a lot of them couldn't afford that. So that's why I started a production on demand model, and designers now can order a custom-made piece of fabric starting from 1 meter. And I think that by collaborating with your customers, by listening to them, I feel that I can be some kind of a linking pin between all the positive and sustainable goals of designers and brands, and making them happen, and at least material-wise.
Yeah, that's really nice, because I already told earlier that it's really important that smaller brands also make a positive impact, but they often feel really limited because of the possibilities. I think you can also agree on that. We have, again, J-Label in the room, who also has a lot of experience with getting sustainable fabrics, but not getting it because they are small. I'm curious, now we know how we make an impact. Is someone here who likes to share how they are making an impact? There. So you do want to make an impact.
I think for me it's just buying less and being more conscious about what I like and what I don't, instead of doing instant shopping. That's one of impact. Maybe it's personal, but it also helps, and especially if you're sharing this with other people who love clothes, maybe they will be more conscious about how they are doing it, instead of actually give up their creativity or showing who they are.
Well, thank you very much. I think that buying less is absolutely step one, and I think it would be really nice if more people would take that first step. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's take a look at the current fashion industry. Sustainable fashion. Tony from Kings of Indigo already told it a little bit. Sustainability, the word, the concept, is a really broad concept. What does sustainable fashion mean to you? What is it for you, sustainable fashion?
Yeah, actually, for me, it's circular fashion. That's how I define sustainable fashion, and I think that's something we're going to dive into later. But really, I mean, a system essentially where a fiber or a fabric or a product is being used, so designed, used, made, collected, reintroduced back into the supply chain time and time again. And also where society and business is set up to facilitate that constant cycling. And it can be within an industry. Oftentimes we think circular has to be within the same industry, or it can be across industries in open loops. But this is, for me, my definition of sustainability.
Yeah, and I'm happy that you brought up circular fashion, the subject of this episode. You told us what circular fashion is very briefly. Why is it important that the fashion industry becomes a circular fashion industry? Why is that important?
I think for me, it's the most holistic concept that we have at the moment to achieve the impact that we have to achieve. I think the industry has for many years focused on parts of the puzzle, for instance, thinking that if we switch to a more sustainable material, then we are sustainable. But the circular model really tackles multiple avenues. So you're thinking about, how do I design for the future? How do I prioritize regenerative resources? But also, how do I rethink my entire business model? How do I eventually start producing less in a good way? So it's really trying to tackle what is a massively complex issue from multiple avenues. And I think this is going to get us closer to where we need to be faster than any other solution at the moment.
Thank you so much. I totally agree. José, you are working with a lot of brands and manufacturers. What are the biggest challenges for those brands and manufacturers to come to that circular fashion industry?
I think the main point is, at the moment, there is a lack of knowledge among the buyers. When I meet buyers from brands, they don't know where to start. I'm always very surprised, but I don't know where to start. They have to start, so I give them some tools.
They don't know where.
Yeah, they don't know how to make the first step. Not even how they can find a more sustainable factory. Not even knowing what is a more sustainable option as for fabric use. So even those small steps, they're not very aware of. And then there is another very huge obstacle. That's the willingness and a commitment of the top management of the present factories. They are the older generation. They are still thinking in the old the old way, and they're not willing to invest enough money and time to invent in the new technologies and to change their process. And the buyers of those companies normally are over their head in the work. They have no time to check out all the possibilities, and the top management is not giving them time and money also to buy other type of products. So
top management, they are living in they're working in an old system.
Yes.
What we try to break. What advice do you give to those brands who are fighting against this old system?
Show that you can do it and that you can make profit. Because the top management, the traditional management, it's all about money and it's all about profit. So if you can show that with your small brand you can make a profit and you can grow, all the companies survive only when they grow. That's the traditional business model. So if they see you're growing and they are not, they want to change, not maybe because it comes from their heart, but they see there's money. So maybe it's not the right motivation, but it can help. So show that it can be done and that you can survive as a company.
Wow, that's a good quote there. But I do wonder, on the one hand, we have to compete as the small brands. You have to compete with the big brands with growing. But isn't it is that a good thing that you have to grow and have to produce more instead of less?
If you take away a share of the traditional industry, then for me it's not a problem. It's not about producing more, but in a different way. So you have to take away the share so they cannot grow and the smaller brands can grow. And then at the end you will reach a turning point where you see, okay, it's possible. And I think we will reach that point maybe earlier than we think, because there is
Is this a forecast now?
I hope. I'm always positive.
Please tell us, when does it all change? Thank you so much. I think you made it really clear to us already. Annemieke, so we heard you are the first sustainable weaving mill in Europe. How do you contribute to a circular fashion industry?
We try to contribute as a weaving mill by making conscious choices whenever we have to make a decision, whether it's from how we mill our parcels to how we weave the fabrics. And Well, first of all, we use a lot of recycled resources and also take into account the circularity aspect of those, because in the early days, a lot of spinning mills just wanted to have denim and mix it with polyester because polyester was quite strong, and then you have a good yarn, they thought. Well, it's not really circular to mix those two together. So that's where we always make the perfect choice, or try to make the best choice in terms of fabric. Also by producing on demand, so we don't keep any stock. For once, because it's, we believe that we can make a better product if it meets the standards of the designer better if we develop it according to those standards. So we can weave it more densely or more open. And also because we don't want to produce waste. So that's also one of the factors, we try to minimize our own waste as well.
That's really nice. And before I'm asking about your challenges, a designer just walked in at the right time. Thank you for that. Because you work together, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been collaborating with Leonie for 2 years now, I think.
What a timing.
She's a really great example of a designer that, out of pure curiosity, she walked across the whole supply chain. So she went to the spinning mills, to the fiber sorters, and to many companies that are into sustainable and circular textiles. She also knocked on my door, and I answered, and we developed a collection of fabrics together, which is also really nice because she also produces on demand. So that's where our business models really link together, I believe.
So, thank you for coming on time. I wanted to ask you, can you maybe tell us who you are, what you do, and how you try to design in a circular way?
Yes, hi. My name is Leonie. Sorry I'm late, I have to work.
You can stand up, yeah.
But I'm working on my own slow fashion brand, so I design custom-made clothing for whoever likes my style. It's very clean, minimalistic, because I believe in timeless is, that's the best way to go. So I developed with Annemieke 6 colors, which can be combined perfectly together and which leads to a timeless design. I use a lot of clean lines, minimalistic designs, magnetic buttons, for example, to make it even more cleaner. And people can order it with me, and then I make them for them just how they want it. And then after they use it, when it needs to be fixed, I fix it for them. And after that, if it's not fixable anymore, I take it back, and then I make sure it's going to be used again.
Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
One more question, sorry. What is the biggest challenge for you to become a full circular designer?
For me, it's to work with pure materials as well, and with a lot of variety of materials, and making sure it's for me personally, it's that people bring it back to me because they love the item so much and it's so personal for them that they don't want to return it. So that's a huge compliment, of course. But I would like to show that we can keep it in the chain. That's for me personally the biggest challenge.
Okay, thank you. And is that something you recognize? And what is your challenge? And is that something you experienced with each other, this challenge?
Well, something that I find very difficult is being sustainable, but being a producer as well. Because it was mentioned before, success would be to sell as many meters of fabric as I can. I say no to American customers a lot of times because people in the United States approach me for my fabrics, they want to purchase them, and I don't think it's really sustainable to weave in the Netherlands with European yarns, source them close to home, and then ship it off to the United States. But on the other hand, if there is no option over there in terms of sustainable materials, am I not too much on my high horse of sustainability? So that's always the difficulty and the paradox of being a producer, wanting to produce less actually, but also wanting to change the world of sustainable and circular fashion.
It's a struggle. So, Gwen, you are part of the Circle Textiles program, right?
Yes.
Are you enjoying that?
Yes.
Just wondering.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea what it is, and probably neither do you. So can you maybe tell us what exactly is the Circle Textiles program and why is it important?
Well, first of all, it's a really catchy title, so...
True.
No, Circular Economy, as I said, is an impact organization based out of Amsterdam. And the clue is in the title. We are working with businesses and cities to try and help them become more circular. But the textiles program is the first sector-specific program that we launched almost 6 years ago now. So here we really zoom in on only the textiles industry and try to understand what are the issues, the bottlenecks there. And we have always been quite obsessed with the topic of textile waste, which when we started was really a non-topic. Now, of course, there's a lot more understanding of this issue. So our mission, let's say, is to achieve a zero waste industry, but we try and tackle it in two ways. On one hand, we really look at the existing waste mountain because there is a huge, ever-growing mountain of waste, whether it's post-consumer, so the used garments, or pre-consumer, the unsold dead stock, or returns more and more, or whether it's post-industrial, which is all of the clipping waste at a factory level. So there we really look at how do you build the infrastructure, actually, and the technology to take that waste and to put it back into the supply chain as a raw material. So that's collection, sortation, mechanical recycling, chemical recycling, all of that. The less sexy side of the supply chain, but what we find really fascinating. And then on the other hand, we really, in recent years, have also started to realize only looking at that is not going to create really a full solution, because you can reduce the textile waste mountain, but what about preventing it in the first place? How do you do that? And there you really come back to circular design. And also business models, circular business models. So there we work mostly with brands to help them train their design teams on circular design, but also start rental pilots, re-commerce pilots, these types of new disruptive business models that are not just selling and pushing product.
Wow, doing a lot of important work. Thank you so much for doing that. In those 6 years, were you already part from it from the beginning?
Yes.
Well, applause for that. Can you maybe share your biggest achievement or something you are really proud of what you guys achieved in the last 6 years?
Gosh, it's been a lot. I mean, one thing which is fresh in my mind, because it's coming to an end in March, is the development of a technology called the FiberSort machine. It's a consortium that we've been involved in now for the full 6 years, actually, of collectors of textile waste, sorters of textile waste, but also technology experts, chemical recyclers, mechanical recyclers. And what we are trying to do together with them is to develop a technology, a machine that can sort used textiles based on fiber composition. So this is one of the big issues with the end-of-use supply chain. You want to be able to recycle textiles, but in order to do that, you need to know, what are you recycling? It's, in very crude terms, crap in, crap out. So if you put in poor quality material into a recycling system, you will get a poor quality outcome. And so up until now, you've just been doing this by touch or by checking labels, but labels lie, unfortunately. About the fiber composition. And the FiberSort machine, which will launch end of March.
Oh, that's exciting.
Huge symposium to launch the machine in its full form, has built this machine. So it can, you basically send big mounds of used textiles through, and it scans them using infrared, and it tells you, is this 100% cotton, or is this 100% polyester, or is this 35-65 polycotton? And then you create these clean streams of materials that can be sent to recyclers, become new yarn, and then go back into a system, for instance, such as Anamika's. So that's really this very disruptive technology that's hopefully going to open up the whole recycling value chain.
Wow, that's really huge, and I want another applause for that, actually. Wow, that's really nice to hear. Before I go to the next question, maybe there is someone in the audience who wants to ask a question, and there is actually.
Hi, I have a question for Gwen about what you just said about just the post-production textile waste. Working on it, since the supply chain is so deconstructed all over the world, how do you think there can be a global system that can actually get everyone involved on any part of the world to work on sorting that textile waste, whether it's offcuts or factory waste, dead stock, anything? Do you think that system that you've been developing can actually go global? Are you optimistic about that?
About the fiber sort machine?
Yeah. Like really getting everyone involved in any part of the world to kind of normalize that system.
This is a huge piece of work that the industry still needs to do. When we talk about textile waste, we know big numbers, how much is produced, let's say, on a global scale, but there is no fine detailed data available on regional flows of textiles. And not only that, but really what does it look like? What is the actual profile of that textile waste? And the same for infrastructure mapping. Basically the infrastructure for collection, sorting, all of these things varies drastically depending on where in the world you are. So that's one of the big challenges, is basically understanding these textile waste flows, understanding the infrastructural gaps, and putting the right technologies in the right places. And we in Europe, North America and so on, we are basically the ones producing huge volumes of waste and not producing new product. So that's part of the challenge. What happens now oftentimes is that the waste that comes back from the consumer is sorted into rewearable or non-rewearable, and the rewearable is actually being shipped abroad again. So this kind of a technology will help us to keep that waste where it was generated and really create more local loops instead of shipping the problem elsewhere, which is currently what we're doing.
Was it answer to your question?
Yeah, for sure.
Great. So before we go to the next question, you said that you're also a teacher at Amphi and that you're trying to stimulate students to think about this, right? How do you try to stimulate the students at the Amphi?
Yeah, so I've been with Amphi for a few years now, maybe 5 years or so, and every year I have to come up with a new method because the level of awareness is going through the roof. So I maybe just to give a little bit of info on Amphi, it's a school based here in Amsterdam. They have a design department, fashion design, fashion management, fashion branding, and they also have a master's program. And so more and more they try to integrate sustainability, circularity into absolutely every part of the course. So for instance, if you're going through the design department, you're learning about circular design, which is how do I design out waste? How do I design for durability? How do I design for cyclability? If you're going through the management part, it's about circular business models, the financing model behind that, the operations behind that. If you're in the branding department, you should really be thinking about what are you stimulating in the consumer? How are you changing behavior with your messaging?
It sounds really good. It's a circular school system.
Trying. I mean, it's difficult, right? Education is not the fastest moving vehicle, but definitely I think we've made huge progress. But one of the challenges there, I think, is how not to design a curriculum which is specific to one university, but try and design a curriculum which is across academies worldwide so that we all are training the next generation in the same way. Because oftentimes we focus a lot on how brands need to change. Yes, that's true. But then, of course, there's a whole new raft of talent that gets released into the industry every year. And if they have the old way of thinking, the old way of doing, then we're back to square one again. So I think there's a huge moment now for collaboration between academies worldwide to develop a common curriculum.
To add to that, because it was really nice, I started giving tours to schools quite a lot in the factory. And it's primary schools as well, so children at the age of 9 or 10 who just walk through the factory and say, well, I didn't know that production was a thing. I always thought that a shirt was just there.
Grow on a tree.
It was just in the store, it's there, and how does it come there? I didn't know that. And so they learn a lot about production and what it entails, whether it's sustainable or not. But also at least once a year, almost all the textile schools visit the mill just to get some sense of awareness of production. Because there's a private school in the middle of the country and students are there trained for retail management. And many of them are not aware of the dirty side of their business. It's not all glamorous. It's also just tying knots and producing your fabric. So I think it's really important to have that exchange because I learned a lot from those students as well and all their questions and also sometimes critical questions about the process. So that's really helpful. And I think that collaboration and exchange of knowledge is really important. And also something that I know that you facilitate things like that a lot as well. So. Yeah.
And you are already contacting other universities or schools to do this, to execute this collaboration, or?
Yeah, I think there seems to be an appetite. So we have started the conversation. Let's see where it goes. But also I think there's an appetite from industry because they realize that their needs, the skills that they need on their teams, also changing quite quickly. So, we're almost training students for jobs that don't exist yet, which is also an interesting place for an educational institute to be in.
That's really true. So I hear a lot of things that are needed still to really make the fashion industry more circular. José, can you maybe tell us what do you need to, as an expert in your field, to make the fashion industry more circular?
It's not so much of what I need. I think my customers, the brands and the factories I work with, and it's exactly as Gwen mentioned. It's those techniques that should be widely available because that's the problem at the moment. Some companies really want to become circular, but the collecting the right technologies are not available yet on large scale. And as you mentioned, you mentioned it. There are fabrics, recycled fabrics, but not in every composition, not in every width and thickness and type of color. So when it becomes widely available, and also the services like collecting are widely available, then it's doable for a lot of brands. And that's important. So it's really very important what you're doing with this group, the Circle, to develop those machines.
So keep it up. And Annemieke, can you maybe add to that? What do you need as a manufacturer here to make a more circular fashion industry?
Well, I keep mentioning it, but collaboration is really important because I quickly noticed when I started producing fabrics that it doesn't stop there. Because a lot of upholstering companies, for instance, where I also produce for, they are used to just glue a fabric to a couch. And then the outer layer is sustainable. It's actually greenwashing in practice because you glue a fabric to a seat. It can never be recycled anymore. So also training my customers how to deal with a fabric, how to, don't put a polyester lining in a cotton shirt because in the fiber sort, if it's upside down or inside out in the fiber sort, it will end up in the polyester tray instead of in the cotton one. So educating your customers, discussing ideas, that's really important, I think.
So I hear a lot of knowledge and sharing knowledge. That's really important. So we talked a lot about how you as professionals, how you as experts making an impact and how you try to contribute to a circular fashion system. What can we as consumers do to contribute to a more circular fashion industry? Who likes to answer to that? José?
It's all about the choices every consumer makes every day. So if we make a more sustainable choice, because that's what it's about, because consuming is not really sustainable at the moment. You should not consume, actually. But if we make sustainable choices, and then we force companies to produce the more sustainable, less harmful products. So I think as a consumer you can really push or pull, doesn't matter how you say it, but I think we can make a huge impact There is always supply and demand, and if there is a demand, the supply will follow.
So I think a lot of people want to know, can we buy from that conscious H&M collection?
Probably a lot of people don't agree with me, but I believe yes, because if we buy the conscious collection and we do not buy the other part, we are forcing and showing H&M that we're interested in a more sustainable product, and they will invest in other sustainable technologies and will offer more and more sustainable products. So I believe that that's a good sign, yes.
Do you agree, Annemiek or Gwen?
I mean, I agree with your logic, and I think the data also points to that. There's a really shocking report last year which asked brands, global brands, quite a lot of them, who is primarily responsible for driving sustainability in the industry. And they listed consumers as number one responsible for driving sustainability in the industry. And then government, shareholders, NGOs, industry initiatives, so they themselves, brands, were sixth on the list.
When was this report?
This is the Pulse of the Industry report from the Global Fashion Agenda, and I think this was 2019, this latest. So then you see, really, they are looking to us as consumers. I don't know would I agree that, but that's me also very personally. I mean, I do think that the scale of the action needs to match the scale of the crisis at the moment. And so I'm probably a little bit dogmatic in thinking that for me, it's really about consuming less, or if you need to, consuming what's already there, secondhand, vintage, thrifted, rented. So swapping, yeah. So I'm quite probably strict on that front for myself personally, and that's also what I would advocate for.
But maybe for a lot of 16-year-olds who are already walking into the H&M, please buy the conscious collection.
Sure.
Sure.
Yes, I think, as mentioned, if we want to be sustainable, we shouldn't consume at all. So we shouldn't.
And I also think it's worth mentioning, though, I mean, even calling ourselves consumers puts us in that role, but there's a lot else that you can do. So caring for your garment, maintenance for your garment, making sure it never, ever, ever goes in the household trash, always goes to a textile collection facility or charity. So these are all, I mean, the role of the consumer in a circular system changes entirely because you're actually the supplier, the new supplier into the system. So I think we also need to give ourselves more space, take up more space, and take on different roles as well in the system.
Yeah, and also to add to that, because if you purchase something, also think about that in a circular way. What are you going to do with that item if you are done with it? If you know you are going to wear it once, just rent it instead of buying it. And that's also something that I advise students a lot, that if you don't have any budget, skip all the party dresses.
Thank you. I think I already heard some really good tips here, really good advice. Yeah, someone there wants to say or add something? Really excited to hear.
Hi, can I just add to Gwen's comment? My name's Kate and I make clothes similar to Leonie. Everybody should really learn to do basic repairs on their clothes, in my opinion, and also learn to make them, because sewing is not a super difficult skill. It's like learning to cook or learning to drive or ride a bike. If you want to do it, then you can do it. And like learning about fabrics, it's really worth understanding, you know, how your clothes are constructed, and it really doesn't need to be difficult.
That's a really good idea. I actually want to take some sewing lessons at the stake.
What's actually really nice to mention, because Kate also developed a bag kit to learn people how to sew their own bag with our fabrics. So.
Oh, this is a nice promotion moment for you. Take your moment. Take it. It's allowed. So, sewing. I hear actually a lot of ways to not buy. Actually, we need to stop buying, or to that we first take a look how we can borrow, how we can do anything except buying. But if we buy, please buy conscious and buy sustainable. I think that's what we are all saying, right?
Also think about the cost per wear, for instance, because people spend a lot of money on their wedding dress or on their ski outfit, but that's things you wear once or 1 week a year. So think about your basic black T-shirt and how much you are going to wear it and how much it can cost then, because it makes more sense to invest in a pair of trousers than in a dress that you occasionally wear.
Now that we talked about all the ways to approach fashion in a kind of new way, because the old way for me was just, oh, I need something, I walk into the store. So how does the future of fashion looks? Are we going to walk into the street and only see fashion libraries, or what do you think, José?
There will be still a lot of people that want to buy clothing. Of course, we are here with a different audience, but we have to look at the mass. And the future will be that, I think, is that we move fast to circular fashion, and that people will keep on buying, of course also renting and leasing and those kinds of different business models. But I'm positive about the future, but not that optimistic, because I know people want to buy new clothing, different clothing. But I believe we will make this move towards circular fashion, because in the end it will be also cheaper, and we have to do something. We have to not to damage the world anymore, and people are aware of it. You can see at the audience here, most of them are quite young, and they are the future buyers they're the future buyers and the future consumers. So I think it will improve.
We have hope.
Yes, definitely.
And Annemieke, how does the future of fashion looks like?
Stealing your thunder perhaps, but circular. I think that the future of fashion is really a circular system where waste is not waste, but a resource for new items. And that's it in short.
Wow, short and powerful. And Gwen?
Now I can't say circular. I am a real true believer of the power of resale and of rental, and I think that's going to explode. You also see that in the projections, so both are set to outstrip the traditional retail market by quite a lot, especially re-commerce, which is the sale of second-hand product, is meant to become almost twice as big in the next 8 years.
Yeah, and we also, they just launched A-Found, right? I was also curious about that initiative. Is that a good or a bad thing that there now A-Found is a platform now where big brands like under the H&M group, right? Unsold clothes, they actually get sold again. Is that stimulating the production, or is it just reducing the textile waste pile?
I think it's symptomatic of a trend that we start to see quite a lot in the industry, where a brand will pilot a circular business model on the side, sometimes with the intention, all the good intentions in the world. But then the question I always have is, are you going to scale that? And are you willing for that to start to displace your primary business model of sales? So whether, because if not, then it's really just either a greenwashing activity on the side, or kind of a plaster on the wound trying to solve an issue downstream. So A-Found, I think time will tell in that sense.
But can you say it is one step in a good direction?
Yes, because otherwise these products would be unsold stock, straight to incineration probably. So definitely it is trying to bring that product back to the consumer. So those, I think rental re-commerce for me is going to be the future of fashion, but also I hope that there's going to be this fundamental change in mindset from the consumer. That is hope, probably, but I always think of this return to a different kind of materialism, maybe a truer kind of materialism where we really understand our products and we really honor the material component, you know, the fact that there is value in a garment again. So I think a true materialism is also what I hope the future fashion holds.
Well, thank you so much for sharing already a bit of the future of the fashion industry. We heard that the consumer actually has the most power at this moment to really make a change. We already know we have some consumers, and I think there are a lot of conscious consumers here as well. And maybe it's nice to know from some of you, so if you can raise your hand, how did you become conscious? What was your reason? Because we actually need that reason to scale. Everyone needs to have that moment. For me, it was that I was watching a documentary, The True Cost. You probably know it if you don't watch The True Cost. And at that time I was a young mother, and I was buying a lot of clothes for my son, Mick. He was then 2, and I bought it with the Primark. And I was really happy because there was a store that had cheap clothes, and I was so happy that I could buy so many things for him, because he was growing like, okay. I couldn't keep up the pace, and it was really fast fashion, and I wasn't aware until I saw that documentary, and it really shocked me, but it also gave me the inspiration to really contribute in my own way with my own skills, what we were talking about just now. So I want to know, is there someone in the audience who would like to share that moment of consciousness?
Hi everyone, I'm Su Yang. I actually have a story, but I also want to mention something. For me is that fast fashion is really aligned with a psychological thing, that we live up to beauty standards these days, especially for women, that they have the peer pressure every time that they have to wear something new. They always have to look beautiful, they always have to wear the newest trends, or else they will get bullied, or they will have the feeling that they are not worthy enough to live or to be pretty enough, because, I mean, beauty standards these days, it becomes ridiculous because of social media. Everybody's doing plastic surgery, and I really feel that fast fashion is a thing for a lot of people to hide in, to feel better about themselves. So why don't we start there by educating that people can be looking great by wearing and washing their clothes over and over again and be still okay and still are worthy, you know? So for me, yeah, that's a little bit what for me it was as well. So I really feel the peer pressure of a lot of people around me, that I always had to look fashionable and great. And then I actually went to your event like years ago, and then for me, I really started to see the numbers and the impact of the water use and the chemicals that are used. And then yeah, that was for me the first time that I realized it was having such a huge impact. So for me, wearing the newest trends or buying vintage and knowing myself every year better, who I want to be, what is my personality, what are my characteristics that I really like, and what can I wear that really fits to it, instead of following everybody who do not even know who they are, you know what I mean? So for me, it really started with realizing and experimenting for myself, who am I and what do I feel good in. So that's where it all started for me.
Thank you for sharing. So if I understand it right, for you it was really the knowledge.
It was
that really for you it was more education.
Yeah, it was really education, but also for me, who am I and what did the society made of me? So who am I really, instead of the projecting that everybody did for me. So getting to know myself first and then educating.
Yeah, because I wanted to ask if someone recognizes this feeling, the pressure to always look good. Yes, you can raise your hand. It's allowed. Yes. Whoa, that's actually quite a lot. Thank you for sharing. It's quite personal. But I also wanted to say that sustainable fashion is not about buying sustainable brands. It is becoming conscious.
Yeah, the circular thing. Yeah,
becoming conscious and trying to buy less. And I think people that don't have enough money, that's actually a really good thing to do, buy less, so you don't have to spend so much money. But I understand it's more difficult when you are feeling the pressure that you have to buy.
Exactly, because they do not feel worthy enough when they do not buy, you know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. You want to respond to that?
No, I totally agree with everything you said, but I think the psychological effect of shopping, is it dopamine that we get from buying something, that instant gratification, that will always be there because we're humans and that's the way our mind works. So it's changing that is really, really important with the knowledge, which is also quite a privileged standpoint, that you have the time to dive in and you have the intellect to understand what this means. And, the education part, I think, is really important. Starting from a young age, I'm doing it with my 9-year-old, having tours, so that when you grow up and you've got a bit of disposable income, you're not spending it on crap. And to be confident, to be creative, to be able to use these used clothes and make them your own. So I was just really reinforcing, but the psychological impact is so important to try and rewire our brains on how we buy, how we enjoy life, I suppose.
That's what you said. It's really
how we can be
shift.
Happy without buying, basically. Yeah.
Oh, this is triggering a discussion. I like it. I don't even know if we have enough time, but
I've got to stop talking.
Fight.
And I wanted to add to both of your points that I think the fact that we're all here, it's a privilege, and I think especially, I'm from the United States, but it's another developed country, and where the country is causing the most problems when it comes to climate change, unfortunately, and the populations that will be most affected by climate change are the most vulnerable populations, people of color, people in more developing countries. So I think the moment that really affected me was more of a human issue versus environment, but then I learned all about the environment issues after that was when the factory in Bangladesh collapsed, I think in 2014, and killed over 1,000 people. So I was like, especially as someone who, pro-women, feminist, seeing these women, I think the majority in these factories are women not getting a living wage in unsafe conditions, and what it's really doing to those people really was the thing that got me inspired. So I think as a privileged group, we are the ones who has to look out for these more vulnerable populations that will only get more vulnerable when, it gets hotter and hotter on the planet.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think you have had the same inspiration, right? That the collapse, and then you thought, I need to do something about this, right?
Yeah, actually, it was the starting point of thinking about, a lot of people on the TV are sharing the news about the collapse of a factory, but they kept on focusing only on the manufacturing side. And I thought, what's going on deeper in the value chain of textile production? And it's really opened my eyes as well.
I see. Oh, that's Andy.
My question is towards Gwen, because I think you brought this up. I think you mentioned that most of the recycled clothes, especially the re-wearable ones, get exported outside instead of being resold in the country. I just wanted to know, why do you think that's the case? Is it the psychology of the consumer? Is it the lack of opportunities to sell these products? Or is it just because it's socially unacceptable?
Yeah, it does. Again, I have to stipulate, it does depend what country you speak about. So generally how it happens is the good quality product that's coming back is called the re-wearable, and some of it will be circulated domestically. It's called the crème, like the crème of your coffee. So that's what you might see in the episode, for instance, on the 9 Streets. But the vast majority is baled and exported for reuse elsewhere. It's not a charity operation. That's also often a consumer perception, but it's really a business. So this is being sold to Eastern Europe often, and a lot to Africa as well. And there's a market there. It's a business incentive, and the secondhand industry here on our own turf does not want this product because it is quality. It can still be reworn, but it's not quality that the regular consumer in the Western world might pay for. So this is really why it's happening. And there's a very heated debate around the ethics of it, whether it can continue, whether it is actually, supporting local economies, or whether it's detrimental to local economies. You speak to different people, you'll get different opinions. But the biggest challenge actually at the moment in that part of the supply chain is that usually the re-wearable is a percentage which is manageable, But now what you see is the non-rewearable fraction gets bigger and bigger and bigger because of fast fashion, the dive in quality, but also the amount that we consume. We have more and more stuff that is low quality textiles, can't be resold. And so that is what we have to deal with here on our own grounds. So that dynamic is also changing quite drastically. A lot of the collectors and sorters in the world are really facing a huge crisis at the moment because their business is changing quite drastically.
And to add to that, because we must be aware that fashion is part of the textile industry, but it's not the whole textile industry, because there's a lot of cleaning cloth or tea towels that people just dump in their waste bin instead of in the textile bin, and it is textile and it can be recycled. So that's also really important to take all the other textile industries apart from fashion into account in the recycling business as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have time for just one more question. Yes, okay, so who wants to go?
If we care for our clothes, we care for the people who make the clothes, we care for nature, we care for so many different things, you know? It's like, it's not just one thing we fixate on. I think caring is an important thing.
We think so too. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank everyone. I want to thank the experts. Can we give them applause for sharing? And I really want to thank every single one of you who took the initiative to come here. We really appreciate it. Thank you for Fashion for Good to make this happen.
Thank you for following our video podcast Act to Make an Impact. You can watch and listen all episodes on Spotify or YouTube. Let us know how you want to make an impact on our social media channels or go to MUMSTER/Act to Make an Impact, and I hope you'll join us the next time. Bye bye!